You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network, Blue Raven Network.
The world of 1916 was complex. Well, the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. You'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
Tinfoil Hat Club, Scott Hensler, Monday, 1/23/2017. Last Friday I did the show on secret chords, and it seemed to have struck a chord. And I'll probably just tonight go over some basic things from A to Z. There are some topics, though, I do want to talk about, but the information that I gave on Friday about frequencies, about how they affect us, how they're altering and changing, you know, the presence of our normal residents that God had given us. And this is all in an attempt to force us to be something that God never intended us to be. And so as that information comes out, I hope it helps you understand a little better. Most of you do get it that listen. And listenership is up quite a bit. And I thank you for supporting. I've got a little bit here. I want to talk about Julia Thompson. We were doing a little money bomb for the microscope. Some money had come in. I thank you for that. There's one microscope that had been donated to her, and she's been working with it, but it's old enough that it's not quite working satisfactorily with her computer. But it is generating some video and things to the point that she's going to be allowing me to post it on Scott Hensler or on Tinfoil Hat Club. So after the show tonight, it'll take me about an hour or so to put it all together, but those pictures will be available. And I need to warn you that if you're not familiar with Morgellons, if you're not familiar with the fibers, if you're not familiar with the sores and the horrible things that come along with this, be prepared. I know that when I see these, my heart breaks. I'm targeted, but I'm dealing with it in a different way with psychotronic noise, white noise. Now I've had illnesses, but nothing compared to what she's been dealing with. And when you see the pictures, you'll understand. So again, I want to appeal to those that if you're capable, that if you go to my website on the donation tab and just put Julia on there, then I'll know the money's for that. the information that she's able to gather with these pictures, I've made a decision that I want to go approach the congressmen, the representatives. Now that stuff like this is available with an individual real time, there's no denying it. And when you actually see the fibers have life, that they actually can move, you'll see that it's sci-fi. This isn't like it's some worm entity. This is a device, a solid object that's capable of serpentine, capable of flexing, capable of springing like a spring that's been sprung. And there's no denying it. The video is there, picture's worth 1,000 words. So again, tonight, it'll take me a while to post it, but it will be available there for you. And so I just want to support her as much as possible to get this resolved, because she's not the only one. There's been several over the past couple of years. One of them is actually under care of NASA. Now, I say care for NASA, the whole thing's planned, but she doesn't really have the ability to get away, because they're able to sustain her for living because she can't hold anything else. And so you can imagine being the guinea pig for such a horrible thing. And again, with the people that this is happening to, the numbers are increasing. It will continue to increase, and it's never too late. So, point of no return, the show topic tonight. The question is humanity itself. Has there been enough poison spewed, enough nanotechnology, enough chemtrails, enough, fiber stuff to alter the DNA? Have we gone too far? And so I'm just going to go over some things tonight to give you an idea of the insanity, but at the same time, we need to be vigilant. We need to be prepared. We need to be ready in our own spirit that when God does make the move, and He will, that we're there to answer that call as much as we can. Not everybody is able to fight. Not everybody is able to stand on their feet. And that's part of what this show is about. Again, I've been dealing with this for so long that it's just another day. Come Lord Jesus, come. This really gets old. And, just when I think I've, come to the end of my rope, then I get an email from somebody that is in the middle of a fight like I had many, many years ago. And in fact, I want to touch on that tonight. And as I do, you'll get an idea where I came from. All right? So the question is, who can do this to people? Who can cause people to have fibers and sores and be sick and have headaches from white noise and all this? Well, they're not human, and those that are human are demon-possessed. Again, most of these people, if they are human, they are at a point of no return. Their conscience is seared. They're not coming back. I can remember years ago on the streets of Phoenix, Central runs down through Phoenix, and then you've got First Avenue and First Street that parallel it. And I think it was, would have been First Street. And I stopped in a fast food place. I was in a hurry. And there was a homeless woman outside. And the typical bag lady, and had the shopping cart and everything. And as I walked by, the Holy Spirit said, give her $20. So, okay. So I got some money out of my wallet. I was working full-time then, and, everything was good. So I turned around and tapped her on the shoulder, and she turned around and looked at me as I gave her the money, and she looked through me. She was gone. There was no one there. It was a complete void of human conscience, of soul. Now, obviously victimized, obviously terrorized, obviously abused, obviously, everything that could ever be done to them. But basically, they just checked out and they're just existing. And it wasn't so much, I think the Holy Spirit, wanted to give her money, wanted me to see up close what can happen. Because this was quite a few years ago. So this was a experience for me after already dealing with an individual that was had a very severe case of borderline personality disorder, one of the worst ones that had been seen or documented that the psychologist had dealt with in Arizona. And what I saw in this woman was the results of borderline personality disorder, where the soul had literally been robbed. And it was a terrible, terrible thing. But it, again, these are the things that are real. These are the things that are happening. A lot of the homeless people out there who have been gathered up, by the way, and taken to FEMA camps, a lot of them have been destroyed. They've weeded through those that they could work with, that they could reprogram and turn them into gang stalkers, turn them loose on the streets in San Francisco and New York, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Chicago, down in Florida, higher populations, Texas, Dallas. And so a lot of you now are being gang stalked by these very people who are homeless, that there was a point of soul loss. I've talked about that, flying monkey syndrome, that with the hyenas, the reptilians who have done this fallen angel technology, have literally created monsters, have literally created creatures that give all the appearances of a human, but they are demon possessed. Their souls are gone. And it's a shame, because we were called to reverse that. And some, may be at a point that they can be brought back, but the problem is that when you create a personality disorder, this is who they are. You need to understand that. So if you're trying to help somebody and you're beating your head against the wall and you don't understand why they don't get it, well, excuse me, they get it. That's who they are. Do you understand that now? And so to weed through this encapsulation of their soul is very difficult. All right? Now, the blood of Jesus, power of the Holy Spirit, absolutely can break through. But notice I said personality disorder. It's who they are. So there has been a choice made. Do you understand that? We are of free will. And it's in that choice, just like you choose to do witchcraft, you choose to do divination, you choose to lead into a doctrine of devils, or man's doctrine, or man's traditions, and it becomes who you are. That's why a lot of people who are religious, as far as I'm concerned, it's harder to work with them than it is those who are coming out of witchcraft, because it has become who they are, and they're not going to let it go. All right? Now, in order to establish a better ground for us who have to deal with this situation, to deal with these people, and maybe some of you are actually coming out of it, Wednesday, I've chosen to do that night as a fight night. That'll lead and prepare the way for Friday for Julia. So if you have issues, if you have gang stalking problems, if you have visitations from spirits, if you have synthetic demon visitations, which most of you do, meaning that there's both, electronic means to give you the impression that you're being demonized or gang stalked, when it all is a facade, when it all is a lie to be placed in your mind. Now, you are experiencing it. You are feeling the emotions. I'm not taking that away from you. That's not what I'm doing. But you need to understand the whole thing is like being in a matrix. It's like being in a dream, and you can't wake up from it. And in reality, it's all in your mind. That's why the battle's in the mind. That's why witchcraft does what it does. And so this hindering and blocking and oppression of the mind can be from the outside and can be from the inside. And so Wednesday, as I go through spiritual warfare, as I pray, as I discuss what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, I want you to come along with me. All right? Because the words that I speak, the way that I approach it, the authority that I operate in, I've been doing for a very long time, so I know what works. I know what sets people free. And you all have the ability. You just need a helping hand. You need someone to come up alongside. You need someone to stand in proxy. You need to have things broke off of you, so you can, get that strength. You can get that desire to fight back. A lot of you have lost your desire to fight. So that's what I'm going to be doing Wednesday, and I hope you join me with that. All right. Now, that'll lead into the coming next Monday on the 30th, FOJC Radio, David and Donna. I'll be on their show for the interview. It's 8 p.m. Central. And most of it will be about gang stalking and mind control and psychotronics and things of that nature. But he seems to be up to speed for the spiritual warfare, for satanic ritual abuse, release of those people who are in bondage. So this actually should be a very powerful night. It should be a coming together of minds who have experienced. Now, he's got a lot of experience. All right, he's a senior, he's an elder. And from what I've heard and what I've talked to him about, he knows what he's talking about. So this is going to be a very powerful night. Do you understand that you've got two seniors, two elders, two experienced individuals coming together comparing notes? All right, so I believe that God's going to be in the midst of that. Now, before I go any further, I was going through some of my paperwork, some of my pictures of the past and things, and I came across an article about my daughter back in the 90s and her mother. And so I want to tell you the story of what happened to my daughter and her mother as they were walking out of the store. Now, actually, my daughter was sitting in the car waiting for her, and she had gone in to buy some things. I know groceries. It was a grocery store. And on the way out, there was a man who was watching the parking lot to see who he could rob. Well, here comes my ex. And so the man targets her, goes after her, assaults her, and tries to take her purse. Well, they picked the wrong one. He picked the wrong one to fight, to try and steal her purse. You know how it is, ladies. It's your purse, all your belongings in there, your credit cards, the last dollar that you have. And so she wasn't going to give up. She wasn't just going to hand it over, and she wrestled with him. But he overpowered her, knocked her down, and she hit her elbow on the asphalt. And you can imagine the pain that caused, and that was it. She was done. Well, in that scream, my daughter in the car heard her mother scream. And by this time, by the time she got out of the car and came running to the aid, the man had run to his car and was trying to get the car started. You know how you turn the key. Well, Arizona's fairly warm, and I don't remember what time of the year it was, but his car window was open. And so my daughter took it upon herself to jump through the window and wrestle with him over the car keys. Now, you need to understand that not everyone can do that. I'm actually surprised she did. She happens to be a chip off the old block, so I can see her attitude in this. But you know how dangerous that is. And it turned out, yes, the man had a gun. Now, he could have very easily have shot her, but he ended up pushing her, grabbing her face, and throwing her back, and she went down onto the asphalt as well. He managed to get the car started and drove off. So I give my daughter credit for that, but at the same time, please don't do that. That's a situation that could have got her killed, because I actually know somebody who died that very same way. They actually approached the car from a theft, and they were shot and killed. The bullet went right into their sternum. So please don't do that. But she did. The man drove away. There were people who witnessed even though it was in the 90s, they had cell phones and they called the police. Now, that particular part of town, the houses had alleyways. Not all the new homes in Arizona do, but this did. And as he drove off, he found an alley that he had ducked into, and the Tempe police, because this was Tempe, Arizona, were driving down, and they saw the car in the alleyway. So the first officer pulled in silently, got out, pulled a gun on the guy when he had his face in the purse that he was going through, and a fight ensued, and the man ended up able to get his car started and drive away, just like what happened with my daughter. and the officer leaped in the window. So now we got 2 windows breached for this guy, and he managed to, the guy driving managed to push the officer out of the car, and he fell. And the paper said that he wasn't injured, but I understand that he did sustain injury and that it actually led to an early retirement. But in the frustration of the officer, he pulled his he had his firearm, and he fired, and it blew the tire out on the car. He hit the tire. The man lost control. These alleys, just nothing but gravel. It went through a fence and then smashed into a block house. Now, here's where it really gets interesting, all right, as if that wasn't enough. That the particular section of the house was the bedroom of a child. Now, the child, if, just like I was one of those that would fall out of bed and was always rolling around and everything else. And this child was known to work its way to the foot of the bed and sleep at the foot of the bed. Well, this particular night, or I should say towards the evening, that the child had this time around worked towards the head of the bed. And it's a good thing because all the bricks and the car and the blocks and everything else fell where the child normally was sleeping. And by the recorded tonnage of the debris, it would have for sure have killed the child. But instead, the child was safe at the other end of the bed. The child woke up only to, in a dream state, to maybe cry out a little bit, forcing the father to come in and investigate what's going on. And I understand the child actually went back to sleep, which I believe was a divine intervention. Now, at this point, the assailant left the car and was seen running down another alleyway, and by that time, other officers came and they apprehended him. And here it turned out that this man was a drug runner, was a gun runner from New Mexico with a federal warrant, was considered armed and dangerous. So that situation could have been very severe for my daughter, for my ex, for this child, even the family. I mean, the man could have even attempted to have shot at the father who came into the bedroom. So in that scenario, I believe there was divine intervention. Now, why do I tell the story? Because regardless of the circumstances, God is in control. There is no doubt in my mind that that child is alive because of divine intervention. Now, regardless of the circumstances that you are in, and as tough as it is, and it is tough, understand that victory is coming. There is going to be a great mighty move of God, regardless of what these demon-possessed reptilians, grays, hybrids, fallen angels, demons, whatever the circumstances are, flying monkeys, laughing hyenas, there is a point of reckoning. There is a point in time that they will be called on the carpet for their crimes. So I want you to be vigilant. I want you to stand fast in who you are, regardless of what's being done to you, and do not give up. Do you understand? Many of you are only alive because of divine intervention. The stories that I hear, I could sit here for an hour, and I've even written about it in my books, about some of the circumstances that have happened, that there was no question that there was divine intervention, that I'm only alive because of that. So with that, again, it's no mistake that you are alive today in these times. As terrible as it is, there have been times, where there were rulers, there were, like Genghis Khan and some of the others, were just massive killing took place. Now, that is happening around the world. But we in this country, to a point, have been blessed. But unfortunately, time's running out. So the point is that in your spirit, in your soul, knowing who you are, take a stand. Do not sell yourself out. Do not take the mark of the beast. Do not give in, because the tyranny, the psyops, the social engineering, the attempt to cause you to be something that God did not intend you to be, is what they're doing. That's part of Morgellons disease, part of the DNA, part of all the stuff that they're doing. But you'll notice that for those who have Christ Jesus, it's not working. Even though they are sick, even though they are having issues, they're not giving up, because the love of their God, the love of Jesus is in them. Now, with that said, one of the problems that's happening out there is that there are what we call false converts. meaning that because of the lies of the mainstream church, that all you have to do is a little cutesy prayer and you're in like Flint. You've got fire insurance. Well, that's not the case. There needs to be an altar, a change in your heart. There needs to be an understanding that you are of one that was once an enemy of God, and that you come to the understanding of your free will and choice to choose sides. Now, being born from above, being born, into Christ, these things, sure. But you need to understand that as we move forth and spread the word, that there are those who are caught in the middle. There's those who are on the fence, and it is our job to pull them in, pull them on our side. All right? So regardless of what your stand is, understand that there is a job to do. And again, it's no mistake that you are alive in these times. So I just want to encourage you that, again, that's going to be part of Wednesday to do that. All right? So with divine intervention, show yourself approved for what God is going to do in your life, because he is definitely going to do something. There is no question. He certainly has done it in my life, and I'm waiting for the next move to counter the enemy. So hang in there. Just hang in there. Again, Wednesday, we're going to fight. Do not give up. Justice is coming. Be ready. Okay? All right. All right, let me touch again on personality disorders. Now, personality disorders can be very wide. Now, you need to remember, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I'm someone who has dealt with soul ties, someone who has dealt with multiple personalities, with identity dissociation disorders, those people who are satanically ritually abused, those people who have been monarched. And in the ritual and the trauma-based mind control, that the altering, the splitting of an individual can be so severe that the core person is down 5, 10, 15, 20 personalities. All right. Now, on personality disorders, then again, that is who they are. And so what you do is then you appeal to the spirit in them. You appeal to them to understand that there is a way out, because many of the personalities that are within them, that when it was trauma-based mind control, that there are those splitters, those alters, there are ones that are runners, all right? So as soon as you get close to possibly unwinding, peeling back that onion, then the multiple personality, the alter of a runner, the alter of a protector, I call them an FU teenager sometimes. And they literally come in out of nowhere. You're talking to somebody and you're making headway. And then all of a sudden you're in a fight that is so emotionally drawing on you that you give up. Now there's also a spirit that is happening within the spirit realm that is tugging on your soul, that is tugging on your emotions. You may not have been through deliverance. You may have open doors. You may have a soul tie with them. You may be even engaged in sexual behavior with them. And now there's transference of spirit. You now have created a soul tie, and now you're in a fist of fury. You're in a basket full of snakes. And many of you are outgunned. And so the emotional drain on you is terrible. It absolutely takes you to a point that you give up. And then what happens when you give up? Now, I want you to understand this, because many of you, the emails that are coming in, I see this, that because of the transfer of the spirits with soul ties or whatever means, you may be even married to them, that then there's a pull that pulls you back into them that actually causes such a disruption, so much pain to your spirit, that the pain of giving in and going back to them is actually less than what you're experiencing being separated from them. There's a little restaurant that I like to go to for breakfast once in a while, and they've got a little sign up there, and it says, it is so painful without you that it's as if you're here with me. And basically, if you're in that kind of relationship, you can relate to what that sign said. And I've dealt with it myself, and so many of you are as well. Now, the other issue is that these soul ties are a cancer of your soul. Okay, they literally keep you in bondage to where God cannot work in your life. Have you noticed that? Some of you say, well, I've got this blocking. I can't seem to read Scripture. I can't seem to hear God's voice. Well, you haven't severed a demonic soul tie. You haven't pulled yourself away from those that influence you both emotionally, spiritually, and even physically. And so you're in this bondage with an individual that you're unevenly yoked with. Now, unfortunately, if you're married to them, there's a different circumstance that is taking place other than just being in a relationship with someone. Now, in that case, that needs a divine intervention. Many of you are trying to fix your spouse. Many of you actually have your own problems, and you're focusing on their problem, and you're not getting yourself right. You're not trying to get rid of the particular influence of spirits, breaking the curses, closing the doors, lifting those strongholds. You're blaming the spouse. Okay, stop doing that. Because what you're doing in reality by trying to manipulate and control another person, whether it is through being a manipulator, being one that is referred to as an enabler, that all of these codependency actions can actually fall under witchcraft. Okay, so in reality, what you're doing is you're practicing witchcraft. You're trying to control another individual. So now you understand why God's not working in your life. You're actually performing something that falls under divination, and which is in direct, contradiction to God. All right. So make sure that you're not doing that. Simply surrender. Lay them at the cross, give in the sense of surrendering them, okay? Just let go of them. Let God work in them. God's going to speak to them. And if you're constantly being the voice that speaks to them, they're not going to hear God. So I hope that makes sense to you. I know it's tough. You may be in a relationship where someone is very destructive. I was. Passive suicide eventually took them out, but that's their choice, okay? And when they've made that choice in these personality disorders, that's why it's so tough. And believe me, witchcraft is in the middle of it because, again, it falls under mind control. Now, the other issue is the mimicking of psychotronics, meaning that the influences of the cyber warfare that's being placed on us through Wi-Fi, through cell towers, through satellites, through drones, through whatever means of public service communication, then the altering or the mimicking of soul ties, the mimicking of demons, the mimicking of personality disorders. So many of the issues that you're dealing with another person isn't really a true personality disorder. It may actually be an electronics means influence that's got their minds double-minded. And some of you may actually be in that case, and it makes it tough to pray, makes it tough to intervene as a deliverance minister because you're influenced by something that is not spiritual. So what we have to rely on is your understanding of the truth of what's really going on and rebuke it. Do not receive it. Do you understand it? Say to yourself, in the name of Jesus Christ, this is my body. This is my mind, this is my spirit, this is my soul given to me by the Father of spirits, God, and that in the name of Jesus Christ I do not receive it. I do not accept it. I rebuke it in the name of Christ and stand against it. Put on the full armor of God. And a lot of you won't. A lot of you have been beat up so bad you can't fight anymore. And that's a tough situation. Excuse me. So just understand that all the issues that we're seeing do not mean that it is necessarily just spirits, just altering of the mind from trauma base, that the individuals are also heavily influenced by psychotronics, which, by the way, on next Monday on the interview that I'll be doing with David, that we'll talk about that issue. Now, I'm going to move over to another subject now, and that's shadow people. Now, shadow people, you need to understand, are real. and here's what's happening. If some of you are new listeners and you haven't heard my teachings in the past, let me explain to you what's going on. And I found out this by accident. Then I did the research, and here it turned out that that's exactly what's going on. Shadow people are spirits, but with your gaze, with your focus point of looking forward, the corneas, how they're lined up with the rods, then as the light comes directly into your eyes, then you're able to distinguish color. But your cognitive ability on your processes for taking visual information and process it, then your frame speed is about 30 frames per second. So a lot of times in the past, a lot of movies were never made more than 30 frames. You'll see 24, you'll see 27, you'll see 32. But your mind really can't process it much faster than that anyway. So there's a lot of information, a lot of tape, a lot of video that's lost or not even necessary because your mind only processes so much. Now, when we come to peripheral, meaning the vision from the side, you're getting away from the center gaze of the eye, and now the light is no longer striking the rods, and the color distinguishing ability is then lessened. All right, so anything that comes straight in then has better color clarification. As you get to the sides of the eyes on the peripheral, then you get away from that ability and things become more dark. Now, here's what's interesting. That in that process, that the processing of the visual information for the gaze is actually different than the peripheral. So you've actually got two parts of the brain that are working in tandem, and the peripheral has the ability to sustain a visual image for a longer period of time. Do you understand that? Because on your gaze, you've got 30 frames a second, so the mind's boom, 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 boom. So as soon as something comes in, there's already 10 frames on top of it. Do you understand? So it's already moved away. But when it comes to the gaze, it's held in memory longer. So when you have a spirit, excuse me, that moves along the side in the gaze, it's captured longer. It's stored in your memory longer. Let's say maybe 3, 4, 5 frames versus 1 frame. And so you see a flash of something out of the corner of your eye. And that's referred to as shadow people. So if you have visitations, if you have spirit issues, now I'm not talking about orbs. Orbs generally are something you visually see forward or they're captured on your camera. But now I want you to understand what the explanation that I just gave you. Hopefully you can comprehend now that situation. That now that makes sense why shadow people are seen out of the corner of your eye, because the content of the visual is separate from the center gaze, and that the memory content is held longer. Okay? So you see, even though it's moving quick, even though it's in the spirit, and you capture, you may only have 1 frame, but it's held for a longer period of time, and you go, whoop, whoop, what was that? Well, that's what's going on. You saw it, it's real, it happened, and they may have moved on, you may not see it again till another time, but the point of it is you did see it, it is real, you're not crazy. So I want you to understand, if you're dealing with these situations, that it's hard to talk to people about it, but it is a fact, all right? And that is the explanation of it. Let me tell you how I came across that. Years ago, when I was very dyslexic in the old days, and I went through the eye exercises, I went through the training. I had an ophthalmologist that was a specialist in this, and he helped me out. And I was sitting at a railroad track, and there was a train going by, and it was one of those mile-long trains. You know, it's incredible how long a train can be. And so I thought, well, what the heck, I'll read a book. So I had a book on the front seat, and I was reading it. And so my eyes are fixed on the texts of the book, and in the upper peripheral, as the train was going by, it was more like a still frame, a digital image where every other car or the car in itself moved like a very slow digital processor. So it was like click, click, click. And that was my first experience on that phenomenon that I was explaining. And I told the eye specialist about that, and he was very excited because he actually met somebody who witnessed that particular circumstance, and he's the one who told me all about it. And then I was able to piece it together later on Shadow People. So I experienced it myself, and it's quite amazing. So the mind is amazing. And now that may be one of the gifts of God in order for us to do that, all right? So Shadow People in your peripheral versus your gaze is reality, all right? Now, if you have visitations, if you are dealing with entities that are coming to touch you, to unfortunately sexually assault you, molest you, I get this all the time from people who contact me. That's a terrible situation because talk about violation. I'm interested that if any of you are out there and you haven't talked to me yet, I'm trying to compare notes to those who have this happen more frequently while in water. Whether you're in the tub, whether you're in a jacuzzi, whether you're in a pool, you've gone to the water park, you're in the ocean, whatever the situation is, if that increases with you, I'd like to know about that. I'd like to interview you. I want to talk more about that. You need to remember that whether you believe in the flood was a isolated incident in the world or whether it was a massive world event, we need to understand that those things that were already a corruption, Leviathan and different things that were in the water, they were not destroyed. It's only the two-legged or the four-legged things that were on the earth that was then swallowed up by the water, no place to go, then drowned. But those entities that were already in the water were not destroyed. There's nowhere that I see a record of anything that points to it. And so a lot of the entities that are out there, and I've talked about sirens, I've talked about mermaids, I've talked about different things, but it does seem that there's a high frequency of sexual molestation that takes place with water spirits. And so I'd like to know more about that, and if you have that occurring, it may be hard for you to talk about. A lot of people don't, and I get that. But boy, I tell you what, there's very little that I haven't heard. And certainly if I can pray for you and break that off you, that's a win-win situation. All right. Excuse me. I've been sick myself, and I'm finally coming around a little bit. But and I know some of you have been praying for me, and I thank you for that. That flu, the chemtrail poisonings, whatever's going on out there, boy, it's a really strong one. And so if that's a situation that you've dealt with, or haven't yet, hopefully Wednesday when we come together, you won't have that. You won't get that because that really knocks you off your feet. It takes a couple of weeks to recover from that. All right, as I close out here, I also want to cover phobias. I want to talk about spirits of fear, spirits that cause arachnophobia, cause you not to step into an elevator, cause you to have heart palpitations when you cross a bridge or get into an elevation that really isn't that high, but you have an incredible fear of heights. You may have fear of man. You may have fear of women. You may have fear of success, fear of relationships, fear of death, fear of loud noises. You know, it's amazing. There was someone that I was working with that had fear of loud noises, and there must have been more than one spirit, because though I was able to contain it and cast it out of the individual, it actually transferred to a relative of theirs. And in the attempt of getting out of the relative, it came back to the original person. And that doesn't happen very often. I mean, normally what something is cast out, so that's an indication to me that there's more than one. All right. So I was successful in casting out the one, but maybe the next one in line, maybe there was an order, a rank. So the ones that were actually causing the problems had a rank over the other ones. And then once that one left, then the next in line took over. So that can be a circumstance that happens in families. Now, I've mentioned about if you have a spouse die, if they had disorders of phobias or nightmares or anxieties and all these other issues, and now you have them. Well, what happened is when they died, now that their body is no longer sustainable, no longer able to allow the spirits to act out their ugly nature, they transferred over to you. Now, it doesn't always happen. Many of you held out. You didn't have sex before marriage. You waited to consummate that after you went before the Lord, and God honored that. And so even though your spouse died, whatever that circumstance was about, you didn't get their spirits. But many of you did, all right? And or you had an open door that was familiar to each sides of the family. And so that in that case, so because many of you did sustain, you didn't have sex before marriage, and you still dealt with it, well, that meant that you both had the same generational curse, and that there was a chance that you two were brought together intentionally by the spirits to continue to strengthen. Now, witchcraft spirits love to come together to increase their power. So they can literally cause you to meet someone, bump into someone continually. Do you remember the old TV show, That Girl? Do you remember that? In the beginning, the very first series, boy, I tell you, dating me, right, how old that one is, that she kept running into this guy everywhere she went, and then they ended up being boyfriend, girlfriend. And that was a circumstance that I see in my life, and it turned out that the whole thing was a setup, that this was a demonic coming together in order to unite so they can increase their power by both sides having the same issue. Do you understand? So if you're still single, if you're looking for a mate, if you're looking for a wife or a husband or something, keep that in mind. Pray about it, all right? Understand that there's an assignment, that counterfeits can be brought to you, and it can be very dangerous. And so phobias, strong delusions, false memories, anxieties, all of these things are a demonic spirit, regardless of what the mainstream church tells you, okay? They don't know anything. I'm sorry. They've kept you in bondage by not adequately bringing you up to speed about the spirit realm. And so after all these years that I've been doing this, the same thing keeps repeating itself, especially those that I'm working with now that are in relationship with those with borderline personality disorder. Is that what God had for you? Of course not. That was a demonic setup. And it worked. It has an incredible devastation on you that can only come from the demonic. Now, of course, when you, as I mentioned with the soul ties earlier, that can keep you in bondage. So the soul tie needs to be severed, needs to be broken. Now, remember that on Tuesdays and Thursdays is when I pray and minister with people. So Tuesdays right now, it looks like it's filled up. If you need prayer, then I can fit you in on Thursday. There are some that I've put on the side because of the severity of the cases till I get stronger. There's a few cases out there that are very powerful cases, and until my body and my mind is more up to speed, I'm not going to approach that. I'm going to be smart about this. I pick my battles, and when I'm strong again, then I can hit it hard. But in the meantime, those that just have, let's put it in a category of a 50 or 60 percentile, that's a piece of cake. I can deal with that. So if that's you, give me a call and we'll figure it out from there. Now, if you're having dreams that seem real, dreams that you can't wake up from, that may be a form of astral projection. You may literally be being taken into the spirit realm, and some of you have had that. Some of you understand astral projection, astral travel, transcendental meditation, going into another realm, going into other dimensions, going places, maybe even thinking that you're being abducted by aliens and it's grays and they're doing all that sexual testing on you and taking eggs and taking sperm, and you've actually dealt with meeting your child later. Now, that's a pretty freaky situation. There are many people that have been in stores that the powers that be that have done this have intentionally had you meet your own child that was basically a test tube baby, most likely has fallen angel technology of reptilian, is not all human, but you know your child. And so this is a trauma. This is a circumstance of pulling you into a stage that is keeping you in turmoil all the time. That was by design. So if that's happened to you, just let it go. Okay, it wasn't God's will. This was a demonic situation, and whatever the circumstances are with that child, again, that's God's going to be the one to deal with it. All right, so let that go. If that's happened to you, if you're having dreams that you can't get out of, again, give me a call, because these are things, excuse me, that affect your soul, affect your spirit, affect your heart to a point that recovery can take a very long time. When you give up, when you think that so much has happened to you that you cannot be forgiven, that you lose your worth, that if someone found out what you did, what happened to you, some of you have been raped, some of you have been molested, some of you have gone through ritual abuse, and you're scared to tell people because you think that if someone were to actually find out what happened to you, they wouldn't like you anymore. They wouldn't love you. You're unlovable. Well, that's a lie. That's a lie straight from the pit of hell. And by the way, molesters and those people who assault, that's one of the lies that they'll tell a child. Pedophiles, they'll tell a child after they've done their dirty deed that if you tell anybody, then no one will love you. If you tell your parents, your parents will get rid of you. They won't love you anymore. And that's a terrible thing to say to a child. And so many of you have toxic shame, toxic guilt. Many of you are overweight. Many of you have a fatty belt around you that is part of the pushing away of any human interaction. So you've made yourself unattractive. You've gained weight in various places where you were molested. And this is a way of keeping at bay any potential mate. And that's a very toxic situation. Now, you need to understand that, again, that how that happened to you was by design, and that can be broken. Now, there's a good book out there called Skeletons in the Closet. Now, of course, they don't address the spiritual aspect of it, but if you're dealing with that, then that may be a book that you may want to read. And, of course, if you have not read my books and you are in a situation where you can't order them off of Amazon, email me, okay? I will send you them in PDF. I know it's hard to read, but it's the best I can do. If you're in a situation where the hard copy of Hoodoo Voodoo would benefit you, let me know, all right? So the idea is to get these books out there as much as possible so when the internet goes down and so forth that you still have a reference that you can turn to, all right? Now, so in reality, these dreams, they actually are taking place, all right? So again, you're not crazy. You're not hallucinating. This is the spirit realm doing everything it can to keep you in bondage, all right? Where are we at for time here? All right. You know, I was getting a lot of Bibles or a lot of emails about the Bible and the Mandela, time travel. You know, I did the Montauk shows. Just to understand something here, because it's hard to comprehend. If you've been a devoted Berean and searching the scriptures daily and all this, understand that 66 books, that was an intentional number. There are books out there, extra-biblical texts, that were removed, were taken out, were intentionally left out, that are capable of piecing together the circumstances that we are dealing with today. And so just understand the number 66 was basically the Luciferians laughing in our face, giving us a number that we think is biblical, okay? Now, the books themselves, there's been a lot of influences. So I've mentioned before that what I'm doing is I'm basically hitting the reset button. Now, the big problem that I'm seeing also is those who are just now coming into the understanding that you need to surrender to the Most High God through Jesus Christ. And so you don't have the years of untouched text. You have not experienced the Mandela transition. Many of you have read the word for years, and it's on your hearts. But unfortunately, there's a great deal of people who are just now coming to this, and now they have tainted, they have twisted, they have altered biblical text. The scriptures are being altered through the Mandela, being directly related to CERN, as I've described on the Montauk shows that I did on how they're doing this. And so be ready to answer questions of those seeking. Okay, and if you are seeing something that's talking out of both sides of the mouth when it comes to reading Scripture, then most likely you have a book that has been altered. Now, stay away from the NIV. That's this altering of the text was done years ago to take away the blood, to take away the power, to take away the knowledge of who you are. It may sound good. It may sound like it answers the question, but the true power and authority is missing in that book. All right, so stay away from the NIV. Now, even the King James is being altered. Even some of the others that you've had in your family that you know for a fact at one time said, one verse, and now you come back and read it, it's different. It's happening all over, okay? So just be aware of this, and those people who are looking for answers, be ready to assist them. All right, because what a terrible situation to come into the understanding and now not have the truth. All right, many of the history books all the history books for that matter that we had shoved down our throats, they were all rewritten. There's lies all the way from the Nita Pinta, the Santeria. Everything about this country, 1776, all of the circumstances that have led for our country to be where it is have been a lie, have been altered. And now we're finding that our biblical information is being lied and altered. So just be very vigilant, be understanding. This is why it's so important to have that relationship with God so you can go to your prayer closet and get the truth. This is why it's so important to be delivered and get the lying, false, deceiving spirits out of you so you can hear from the Lord. All right? It's very important. Now, as I close out here, understand that those individuals have done such a thing are narcissistic psychopaths, okay, narcissistic malignant behavior. These are the individuals that are controlling the psyops of cyber warfare, controlling gang stalking, using all the technology that we've talked before, that, again, understand who your enemy is. Now, praying for your enemy and praying for God's enemies are two separate things. I've talked about that. So make the distinguishing who is God's enemies and who is your enemies. All right? And here's another thing as I finish out is those people who, unfortunately, are classified now as Wi-Fi refugees. Now, I'm going to be talking about that on next Monday's interview. That those individuals who are electronically sensitive to magnetism and to radio waves, now those are different, but they can have the same effect, that they themselves are targeted. So if you're an individual that is seeking refuge in the woods, in a cabin somewhere, you've got to get away from all this Wi-Fi. You're not alone. Those numbers are increasing. So again, Wednesday, if that's you, tune in so we can pray for that, because there may be an actual spirit that is causing your immune system to be deficient. It may be part of a curse. It may be part of a word curse, spoken curse, witchcraft curse. And so if that can get broke off of you and then have your body realigned to have the tolerances to be able to have the fighting ability for diseases against things, then that you're a step ahead. Just think of your life being able to come back again, just to be able to be in a regular society. Now, the amount of radiation that's out there and the amount of power is overwhelming anyways. You don't need to be electrically sensitive to be affected by this. But you can imagine how much tougher it is for those who are. And finishing out, I'm finding information that they're actually wanting to bring LSD back for treatments by psychologists, by therapists. If you're schizo, if you're hearing voices, if you've got these issues, they're actually talking about using LSD. Well, I tell you what, you think you see orbs now, you think you see demons. This is a horrific situation. So as this comes to a better understanding publicly, I'm going to be addressing that. All right. Again, God bless you. Meet me on Wednesday. I'll be doing some callbacks on tomorrow. I'm going to be posting Julia's pictures of the situation she's in. Terrible. These are going to wake you up. And again, you've got to have a strong stomach for this, but you understand the suffering she's going through. It looks like I'll be having her on Friday to do some follow-ups. So, and then Thursday again, if I can get you on the list to pray for you, I'll do that. All right. God bless everyone.
You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.